Hey everybody, this is Damian from Studio Pro Musica once again. Today we're going to talk about the tritone substitution, okay? The tritone substitution, sometimes just called the tritone sub, is a really fantastic chord substitution. It's not just for jazz music. It sounds great in rock music, pop music, blues, what have you, okay? In order to understand the tritone substitution, we first have to know what is a chord substitution. And a chord substitution in a nutshell is where in a given chord sequence or a given chord pattern, you take out one chord and you replace it with sort of a similar chord or a chord that serves a similar function. Okay, so a very easy rock, pop kind of example is if I'm in the key of C major, nice easy key to talk about, no sharps, no flats, and maybe my chord sequence is something like C to F to G7, your basic 1, 4, 5. I go C, F, G7. Well, if I'm doing that a bunch of times, maybe it starts to sound a little bland, a little repetitive. So I could think about substituting one of those chords with another chord. Maybe I'll substitute out the F chord and substitute in a D minor or a D minor 7 chord. And now my sequence can go something like C, F, G7, and then C, D minor, G7. Sound a little bit like this. Okay, you'll notice that the F chord and the D minor chord have some notes that are common to each chord, common tones, okay? And that makes it sound quite smooth. The D minor isn't disrupting anything. It's kind of continuing the flow and just adding a little bit of contrast. Again, C, F, G7 to C, D minor, G7, sounding something like this. A little bit of contrast, but it didn't change anything dramatically, okay? Another very commonly cited example is if I'm playing George Gershwin's I Got Rhythm, commonly known as the rhythm changes. 1, 6, 2, 5 is my chord sequence if you're scoring at home. In the key of B flat major, it would be B flat major 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7, B flat major 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. Well, I can substitute out my one chord, believe it or not. I can substitute out the one chord, my B flat major 7 chord, and I can substitute in a D minor 7 chord, which in the key of B flat, C, D, D minor 7 would be my 3 chord. So I can go B flat major 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7, and then D minor 7, G minor 7, C minor 7, F7. And it sounds kind of nice. Here it is without me talking over it. So that 3 substituting for 1, again in the key of B flat, C, D. So my D minor 7, 3 chords substituting for the 1 chord is a very nice substitution. So that's chord substitutions in a nutshell. One chord substitutes for another, but the intent is not to disrupt the whole sequence, rather to add a little contrast. And very often the chord that you substitute in will in some way serve the same kind of function. You might say the same harmonic function within the chord sequence, okay? So what is a tritone substitution? Well, in a nutshell, a tritone substitution is when the chord that you're substituting in is a tritone away from the chord that you're substituting out. Okay, so what is a tritone? Tri, 3. 3 tones. Tritone, 3 tones. Remember, what's a tone. In this case, we're talking about a whole step. And remember, a whole step on the guitar is 2 frets, okay? So again, tritone, 3 tones, 3 whole steps. 3 whole steps is a total of 6 frets. Remember, a whole step is 2 frets on the guitar, okay? Whole step is 2 frets, so let's say C to D is a whole step. By contrast, C to C sharp, well, that's only 1 fret. That's called a half step, okay? Whole steps and half steps are pretty important. And so as we talk about a tritone, 3 whole steps, that's a total of 6 frets, okay? So let's go back to the key of C major. And one of the most common tritone subs you're going to find is that you substitute out the 5 chord. What's the 5 chord in the key of C major? C, D, E, F, G. G is my 5 chord in the key of C major. And most often it'll be G7. My 5 chord will be a dominant 7. And so if I'm going to do a tritone sub, I'm going to substitute in a chord that is a tritone, that's 6 frets, away from my G7. Well, what's 6 frets away from G? I can look at a guitar and I can count it out. Here's a G note here at the 3rd fret of the 6th string. G, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's going to take me from the 3rd fret to the 9th fret. That's a D flat. D flat. And so I'm going to substitute in a D flat 7 for my G7. Again, you notice they've got some notes in common. We'll talk a little bit about that later. The other thing you want to notice is that the chord that I substituted in, my D flat 7, is a dominant 7 chord, just like the chord that I substituted out. Now, I want to be clear. In the modern era, it's not viewed as sort of a requirement that you have to substitute in a tritone sub has to be a dominant 7, and the chord you're subbing out is a dominant 7. There's a little more leeway in the modern era, but traditionally, yeah, if you're getting rid of that dominant 7 chord, you substitute in the tritone sub is going to be another dominant 7 chord, a tritone away. And the reason that's important is because that dominant 7 chord that's a tritone away is going to have some of the same notes. 2 of the most important notes within the chord, the 3rd tone and the 7th tone, are going to be identical in the chord that you substituted out. In my D flat 7, you can hear, and here's my G7. So they have, and then you resolve it. So they have those notes in common, okay? So, what's a tritone sub in a nutshell? Tritone sub is when you get rid of a dominant 7 chord in your sequence. Let's stick to dominant 7s for now. Again, in the modern era, you do a lot more with it. But for now, you get rid of a given dominant 7 chord and you substitute in a dominant 7 chord that is tritone, 3 whole steps, 6 frets away from the one that you got rid of. So let's put it in a blues setting. It's really easy to play stuff out of a blues setting. It's a good structured setting. And if I'm doing my A blues, my 1, 4, 5 blues, my 1 chord, of course, is A. What's my 4 chord? A, B, C, D. What's my 5 chord? A, B, C, D, E. So my 5 chord is going to be E or E7. And what I can do in my tritone, to bring in a tritone sub, is I can sub out the E7 with a chord, a dominant 7, that's a tritone away. What's a tritone away from E7? Well, here's an E note, my low E string, right? Remember tritone, 3 tones, okay? 3 whole steps, 6 frets. What's a tritone away from E? The answer is B flat. So I'm going to substitute in, at some point, I'm going to substitute in a B flat 7 for an E7. And in this example, the way I'm going to do it, if you know the structure of a 1, 4, 5 blues, I'm going to play my A chord for 4 measures. I'm going to play my D chord for 2 measures. Excuse me. Yeah, my D chord for D or D7 for 2 measures, back to the A chord. And then my turnaround line, measures 9 through 12 of my 12-bar blues, would normally go E7, D, A, and E7 again. Only this time, that last E7, measure number 12, I'm going to do a tritone sub and put in my B flat 7, okay? So again, it'll be A, D, A, and then turnaround line, E, D, A. Normally I go to E7, but this time I'm going to go to B flat 7, okay? Here's how it'll sound. I'll keep my playing for the rest of the sequence pretty simple, kind of a garden variety blues. Keep it simple. Listen in measure number 12 for the B flat 7. Here we go. Here's the turnaround line. And you heard that final measure was that B flat 7. Again, it has certain notes in common with the E7. Here's my E7. Here's my B flat 7. You heard the 3rd and the 7th tone are common tones. They're just switched. The 3rd and the 7th for one chord is the 7th and the 3rd for the other chord. Doesn't really matter. You got the same notes. So that's my tritone sub, okay? One last time, I'll do it in the context of that A blues. Listen for it, and listen that it provides contrast but doesn't disrupt the sequence, okay? Here we go one more time, just repeating what I did a few moments ago. And there's my tritone sub. So to wrap up, what is a tritone sub? You substitute out a dominant 7 chord in a given sequence. You substitute in another dominant 7 chord that is a tritone. Tritone, 3 tones, 3 whole steps, 6 frets away from the chord that you got rid of. It's really that simple. Just substituting in one dominant 7 chord for another, and the distance between them is 3 whole steps, 6 frets on a guitar, okay? What I haven't mentioned, what's a topic for another video, is how do you solo in that one measure? That's a topic for another video. It orients around a really cool sounding scale called the Lydian dominant. We'll catch up with that in another video. For now, thanks for watching. Please leave comments in the comments section, and I'll see you right back here at Studio Pro Musica on YouTube.